So depending on when this video comes out, the past few hours or days or so have been pretty eventful for Bendy fans for once. And it honestly feels crazy saying that here in 2022, where honestly all hope for the game is lost. But things, dare I say, seem to be looking up for Bendy for the first time in literally years. And there's a couple things that have happened over the past couple of weeks I want to talk about, along with things we have gotten today from the time I'm writing this. Okay, so the first thing I want to discuss is the news that we got in the beginning of the year in January. So if you guys aren't aware, we are awaiting the brand new Bendy in the Dark Revival title, the supposed sequel to Bendy and the Ink Machine. However, after multiple release date estimates were unfulfilled, we are sitting here today without any basic idea even of when the game will officially be released, but we aren't without hope. Because at the start of the year, the Bendy shop where you could buy merch for the game was entirely shut down, and the store was changed to a page saying that things would reopen when the Dark Revival begins. Now, this seems like a pretty big hint that the game is actually near completion, because for once the team is actually making a full commitment that would affect them if not fulfilled. And what I mean by that is, all the previous announcement release dates for this game were just a bunch of words. No real big trailers or commitment or anything like that. But in this case, closing down the Bendy store means that Bendy merch is no longer being sold. Or in other words, no money is being made from that site. So if the team were to full-blown shut down the store to set up for this new game, chances are it isn't to just build any useless hype around the game again, especially when considering that they never announced this change. But more likely, the team is actually doing work to the website because financially that's only what makes sense. Plus, alongside this, in the background, we got a brand new screenshot of the game, finally. Up to this point, besides some basic teases that we had years ago, we literally have gotten like 2 screenshots from the game, so we have been absolutely starved of content, but we have this here. Now, I won't analyze on this too much because people have done that weeks ago and probably better than I could, but it does give a bit of insight to how this game may look in the future, with a main studio and a battery recharge system that could be used as a future mechanic. This whole website debacle was doing a lot more than just letting us know that the game is being developed, because when thinking about things a little deeper, there's an interesting extra judgment to be made here. If the site is going down to set itself up for merchandising for this new game, that tells us not only that they're developing, but also gives us an idea on how far along in development the game is. If merchandise is in production and website design for it is all happening right now, the story, main characters, and most likely majority of the game has already been completed, which is a super great theory to hear. But if this is the case, why do we still not have any release date yet? Because it seems the team is more than willing to give random release dates for games despite them clearly not being ready to fulfill them at all. However, right now we have absolutely nothing in the terms of release dates. And to some, this may look like a huge red flag, because understandably so, it's easy to think that all this could mean that the game is progressing unbelievably slowly, just due to the fact that the team isn't giving us any estimates anymore. But honestly, I think this actually could be a good thing, and many other people agree, because it feels like the Bendy team has become aware of their mistakes, and as the game begins to near actually finishing, rather than giving some random estimate that will most likely lead to another delay, they could just be waiting until the game is actually ready to come out. And soon enough, we could get not just a game announcement, but a specific and realistic full-blown release date. But still, when will this day come? Well, on February 10th of this year, it was Bendy's 5th anniversary. And with all this news coming out just weeks before this date, everybody, including myself, theorized that this could be the big announcement date we were all finally waiting for. However, Bendy turns 5 years old on February 10th, so maybe we could have a huge announcement on that day. And with all the information we had leading up to this, it seemed to make perfect sense. And at the time I'm writing this, it's the morning of that day. And I, among the rest of the Bendy fans, awoke to some news. And it wasn't a release date. However, for the first time in months, we got a tweet from Bendy themselves with an official piece of information. And while unless something new comes out later in the day, we didn't get ourselves a release date, the Bendy team still had something for us. That of which being another brand new game screenshot to tease Bendy in the Dark Revival. This new screenshot shows some level mechanic, with a sign saying a level badge is required to enter into a security door of some sorts labeled over as the pit. Another huge part of the screenshot that people have pointed out was the return of the seeing tool, which was the item in the later parts of the game that allowed the player to see secret writing on the walls, and under a contraband sign we can see what at least looks like the same exact tool. So it appears we could have some reoccurring items in the game as well. Now, if you're new around this whole Bendy in the Dark Revival waiting thing, this may seem pretty underwhelming, and in most cases it probably should be. I mean, all we got was a picture of the new game to celebrate the first one's 5-year anniversary when we were all expecting and hoping to get a release date or something. But let's think about all this from the perspective irrespective of the entire wait for the title since 2019. We have gotten such a small amount of info in the grand scheme of things. All we had going into this year was a couple shallow trailers and like 1 or 2 screenshots. But here in 2022, we are at the beginning of just February and are on our second screenshot with tons of more information. Now, these screenshots in general confirm a few basic things to us, that of which being the fact that there will be new game mechanics, and the game will follow a similar art style to the first game, which obviously makes quite a bit of sense and is good to see. However, I think the most important piece of information we are getting with these updates is the amount of potential speculations to be made for the future of the game. I've already theorized why I think this game is pretty close to completion, and I've stood by that ever since their website had updated as mentioned previously. But the fact that now we are getting even more information, I think gives me more hope for an upcoming release for this game. Now, before I get anybody too excited for this information, I'm sure a lot of people here will be skeptical, because until we actually physically have the game, there's no guarantee we will actually get it. And honestly, I can kind of get behind that because we clearly can tell that meeting expectations are not one of the team's priorities. But realistically, I think that despite there being no release time or anything, we have more information about the title than we ever have had. And I'm confident about a soon release, not just because the developers have said things or promised things, because at this point those words mean nothing, but rather because they've been showing us stuff. There was a video I had seen by IHS Games back before all of this, and one of his biggest issues with the game's development was the fact that they would never show and only tell. But the script seems to have flipped for once, and we actually have tons of proof of this game's development, excitingly enough. I can't wait to see this game realistically come out, and I think it has to be within the next 2-ish years for the sake of their own relevancy. Because if we really are talking about a 6 or 7 year wait from the first game, at that point it becomes excessive, and it's honestly already pretty clear to see that this game isn't as hyped as it used to be. I'm sure it will be huge, but definitely not the same extent as it would have been if it released earlier. Like, I'm not expecting this to be the next Security Breach anymore, which sucks because honestly I think there was a point where this title would have been even more hyped than that. But of course, the more you make people wait, the less hype there's going to be. But regardless, in terms of indie games, this is easily one of the most anticipated releases of all time. Especially since there's games like Poppy Playtime now taking spins on what Bendy did in the past, giving it way more competition and comparisons in the future. I hope also that the game ends up being comparable or better than the first game, and also that it ends up bringing the Bendy game back into one of the biggest horror franchises of the time, which honestly isn't a guarantee, because while the game itself is supposed to be bigger and better than Bendy, with the many company issues that I won't go into in this video, there's always going to be the fear that the team won't be able to produce a similar quality title compared to what they've made in the past. Now, as for any release date predictions, I would honestly say we could expect a release date as early as this year. Reason being, well, I made a whole video about it here, check it out. Also, shout out to YouTube for sending me their own little cereal set. It's actually so cool, and they'll also send me a play button at 100k, so make sure to sub. Anyway, that's all for this video, peace.